In fact, I read one study where they were interviewing 100 people near death, and they began to ask them, what is your biggest regret? Is it regret for things you did or regret for things you didn't do? This is what they discovered. Hey, I'm Terry Savelle Foy, your cheerleader of dreams, and we're taping our podcast right here in Normandy, France. The French say Normandie. We're here right in the city square, right at the place where Joan of Arc was burned alive. They say it was right there on that rock. So here's like the big monument for Joan of Arc. Isn't this wild to be here? Apparently she was burned alive, and then shortly after, 500 other women were burned alive. Pray for me tonight as I minister in Normandy. No, I honestly believe God brought us here to bring revival to this nation, so I can hardly wait to minister tonight. So I want to talk to you today about the 5 biggest regrets people have before they die. I thought it was appropriate to teach on that message. In fact, let's go over here so you can just see how beautiful the city is behind me. Can you see these buildings? It's breathtaking. Everywhere you go around here is gorgeous. So I want to talk about the 5 biggest regrets people have before they die. Now, I know you've heard me and you've probably heard other people say that, the richest place in the world, it's not the diamond mines of South Africa and the oil fields of the Middle East. The richest place in the world is the graveyard, the cemeteries, which, yesterday we went to the memorial, the American Memorial Cemetery in Normandy, and saw hundreds and hundreds of, gravestones, the memorial, with the crosses for the American soldiers. It just breaks your heart, but it does make you think about your life and not going to the grave with your dreams still in you. So they say the richest place in the world is the cemetery because in the grave, there's books never written, songs never sung, opportunities never seized, ideas never pursued. Don't go to the grave with your dreams still in you. In fact, I read one study where they were interviewing 100 people near death, and they began to ask them, what is your biggest regret? Is it regret for things you did or regret for things you didn't do? This is what they discovered. Over 54% regretted more of what they didn't do than what they did. They said the regret we have for, things we've done, that lasts weeks or months, maybe even a few years. But the regret we have for things we never did, it lasts a lifetime. Those, like I said, the opportunities we never seized, the places we never went, the experiences we never took advantage of, the ideas God gave us, but we didn't go after them. Those are the things, the kind of regret that last a lifetime. Well, I want to challenge you today. Do not live with regret. When God puts a dream in your heart, He gives you what you need to go after it. So I want to share with you, in fact, I heard this just the other day. I was listening to a podcast, and there was a pilot on there. And he was saying, talking about planes, he said, it's actually more dangerous for a plane to stay on the ground. He said on the ground is where the plane will rust, malfunction, and it will wear more on the ground than it will up in the air. He said planes were meant to be in the sky. And then he was correlating that with people. He said, yeah, it's like ships. The safest place for a ship is in the harbor, but that's not what it was built for. Well, same with us. You weren't built to just live and die, take up space. No, you were built to soar. You were built to go to new heights, to pursue every dream God put in your heart. So, what are the 5 biggest regrets? Number 1, now let me tell you how I found this out. There was a hospice nurse in Australia who, she's with these elderly people just weeks and days before they pass away. And she said she started hearing all these common regrets among these people. Finally, she got a journal and a pen and just started documenting all these regrets. Well, she started reading over those journals and discovered there were 5 common regrets among these elderly people. So that's where I got this content. This is from Bonnie Rare from Australia. This is what she said. The 5th regret, I'll go down in order. The 5th was, I wish I'd let myself be happier. She said so many people reported staying unhappy in unfulfilling careers, miserable marriages and relationships, and the main reason was fear. They had the fear of change, the fear of the unknown, fear of, going out of their comfort zone. And she said fear kept them in an experience, in a life that kept them unhappy. Well, I want you to know, in the Bible, God said, fear not or be not afraid, I've been told 365 times. That's one for every single day you wake up this year. God is saying, fear not. There's nothing to fear. Be not afraid. Why? Because God is right there with you. So God never meant for us to just live a life full of fear, wondering what would happen if we step out. In fact, let me just tell you, there's two forces in your life. There's fear and there's faith. Well, how do you get more faith? Well, the number one method God has given us to build our faith is faith comes by hearing. So every time you hear God's word, faith comes. That's why I always tell you, subscribe to this podcast, push that little arrow so that you get consistent teaching to help build your faith, because that's what you need to overcome fear. I've been told that comfort and convenience run the lives of unsuccessful people. Well, the reason we stay comfortable is because we're afraid. We're afraid to step out. So I want to challenge you, don't let that be your regret. Build your faith like never before. How? By hearing God's word, so you have the courage to go after your dreams. The fourth regret was I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. They said when people are dying, they're not wishing they'd worked more. They're not wishing, that they'd stayed at the office longer hours. They're wishing they'd stayed connected to their friends. Well, that's one that we have to, on purpose, put it on your calendar to hang out with your friends, to go spend time with them, to go on trips with them, or, In fact, for me, I'm guilty of working so much that I sometimes neglect being with the friends. And I remember last year, I went on a trip to San Diego with a bunch of my girlfriends, and I was thinking, it has been years since I've done anything like this, where I just went to play. We had so much fun that we booked another trip this year. Because I thought, you know what? God brought these precious people into my life, and I need to value these relationships. Well, same with you. But it doesn't just happen. In fact, I have some friends who we would always say to each other, call me sometime. Let's go out to eat. And we'd be like, yeah, call me. Years would go by. We'd see them again. Call me sometime. Let's go eat. Seriously, we live in the same city. Let's go out. Never would. Well, it's never going to happen until you say, Wednesday, 7 o'clock, Joe T. Garcia's. You have to plan it, plan a time to stay connected to your friends. The third common regret people have before they die was, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. In other words, what they discovered was people were keeping their feelings, their true feelings, on the inside in a bad way, which led to a lot of bitterness, a lot of resentment, a lot of offense, where because everything is suppressed and you're just trying to keep peace, don't want to rock the boat, you try to keep peace so much that you keep all these harbored feelings on the inside. What they also discovered was because of the resentment, the bitterness, the offense, it led to illnesses, which probably led to them being on their deathbed. Well, I remember a counselor told me that years ago when my husband and I went to counseling. He said, you have got so many bottled up feelings on the inside and you've got to get this out. Well, sometimes you need to get it out to that person, just forgive them and let it go. Sometimes it's not even worth it to talk to that person about it, but you can always talk to God about it. Just get it all out. It's not worth it. And when you forgive people for the hurt that they've caused in your life and all the effects of whatever it's been, abuse or whatever, when you forgive them, remember this, forgiveness doesn't make them right, it makes you free. So, get those feelings out. The second regret was, I wish I didn't work so hard. This is a statistic I read, was that most American families spend less than 1 hour a day with their immediate family, and they spend less than 1 week a year with their extended family. So, let's make a point to spend time with our family. Let me finish with the last regret, and this was the one that she heard the most among everybody. This was it. I wish I'd had the courage to follow my dreams and live a life true to myself, not a life others expected of me. In other words, what are those dreams on the inside of you that you know God put them in there? Maybe you don't know God put them in there. You are still trying to figure out if this is God or if you're just making this up. I'm telling you, There's a connection between your potential, your passion, and your purpose. So those desires on the inside of you, God gave you those. Don't go to the grave wondering if you should have done that, if you should have written the book, if you should have gone into that business. No, do what God's called you to do. In fact, imagine you're 78 years old and you're looking back on your life and you're talking to your grandkids about what you did. Are you full of regret over the things you did or the things you didn't do? Or imagine, I don't want you to imagine this, but if hospice was sitting by your bedside and they're writing down what's coming out of your mouth, what do you want them to say? You know what? I'm so glad I took the chance. I'm so glad I stepped down in faith and just went for it, because I would never have known the life I have now. I want to challenge you, build up your courage like never before. Listen to faith-building teaching. In fact, I want to give you absolutely free one of my chapters from my book, The 5 Things Successful People Do Before 8 a.m. I want to give you a complete chapter that I talk about stop killing time. And I actually identify 8 ways you can tell if you're wasting your time. I want you to get that. You just click the link in the description, get the complete chapter for free, because I want you to read these. Some of them you might be surprised. One of them is that you're watching too much TV. And you won't even know that until you start tracking your time. But I don't want you to waste your time. I want you to do everything God put in your heart to do. So get access to that free chapter. And hey, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so I can keep you motivated to live your dreams. So from Normandy, France, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.